Hello friends, this is Kumar and I welcome all of you to my YouTube channel. Friends, today we are going to discuss The Lady of Shalott by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Alfred Lord Tennyson is often regarded as the chief representative of the Victorian age in English poetry. He was born on 6 August 1809 at Somersby, Lincolnshire. His father was the rector of Somersby, a tiny village. It was here that he spent all his early life playing by the riverside, reading voluminously, thrilling his brothers and sisters with stories of romance, and writing poetry. As a child, Tennyson was influenced profoundly by the poetry of Byron and Scott. His earliest poems reflect lyrical intensity and meditative expressiveness, as well as his ability to link external scenery to internal states of mind. While studying at Trinity College, Cambridge, Tennyson joined the literary club The Epistles and met Arthur Hallam, who became his closest friend. Hallam died suddenly in Vienna. It came as a blow to Tennyson. He began to write In Memoriam, an elegy for his lost friend, the work which took 17 years to complete. The Lady of Shalott, The Lotus Eaters, Morte d'Arthur, and Ulysses appeared in 1842 in the two-volume poems which established his reputation as a writer. The success of The Princess and In Memoriam, leading to his appointment as Poet Laureate in 1850, finally established him as the most popular poet of the Victorian age. The Lady of Shalott is one of the most interesting narrative poems in the English language. It was first published in the volume of 1832 and was published again in 1842. The poem is divided into 4 parts. Each stanza has 9 lines with a rhyme scheme of A A A A B C C C B. The poem is based on the episode in the Arthurian legend of Elaine, the Lily Maid of Astolat, who died of her unrequited love for the famous knight Sir Lancelot. Tennyson's engagement with Arthurian legend is notably visible in many of his poems, particularly in his Idylls of the King. It is impossible to ignore the Arthurian components in The Lady of Shalott, including the references to Camelot, Lancelot, knights and ladies, and even the name Shalott, which sounds somewhat like Astolat. On either side the river lie long fields of barley and of rye that clothe the wold and meet the sky, and through the field the road runs by to many towered Camelot, and up and down the people go, gazing where the lilies blow, round an island there below, the island of Shalott. So, the first part of the poem gives us the scenic background of the story of the Lady of Shalott. The island of Shalott is situated in a pleasant river which flows down to the city of Camelot, the capital of King Arthur. On both sides of the river are spread fields of barley and of rye. Beautiful lily flowers grow there. The beginning of the poem offers a visual overview of Camelot. The reader is shown the river, the road, and the towers of Camelot at a distance. The people mentioned in these sections are not given specific identities, rather, they are common people going about their daily business. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breeze dusk and shiver, through the wave that runs forever by the island in the river. Flowing down to Camelot, 4 grey balls and 4 grey towers overlook a space of flowers, and the silent isle embowers the Lady of Shalott. So, the second stanza is rich in images of nature, of freedom, and of movement. This is contrasted with the flexible, colorless walls and towers of Camelot. Tall trees quiver as soft breeze blows, causing ripples in the river flowing down to Camelot. The mysterious Lady of Shalott lives all alone in her stately mansion, which is described as 4 grey balls and 4 grey towers in the poem. An expanse of flowers can be seen clearly on the island. This silent island shelters the Lady of Shalott. By the margin, willow weird, slide the heavy bars trailed by slow horses and unhailed. The shallop filleth, silken sailed, skimming down to Camelot. But who hath seen her wave her hand, or at the casement seen her stand? Or is she known in all the land? The Lady of Shalott. Now, this stanza focuses again on the human activity going on around the island. A small river, along with barges with heavy loads, pass, small and quick boats called shallops, skim past the shore around the tower, referred to here as a margin. While all these activities go on, the poet questions if anyone has seen the woman who lives in the tower, implying that she is mysterious, unknown, veiled. Nobody has ever seen her, for she never stands at the window and waves her hand. Only reapers reaping early in among the bearded barley hear a song that echoes cheerily from the river winding clearly down to towered Camelot, and by the moon the reaper weary, piling sheaves in uplands airy, listening whispers, "It's the fairy Lady of Shalott." Here, the poet tells the readers that the lady who lives in the tower has not been seen, and the farmers working in the fields hear her singing cheerfully. The reapers think of the Lady of Shalott as a spirit, a fairy, because they have never seen her but have only heard her singing. Now comes the part 2 of the poem. There she weaves by night and day, a magic web with colors gay. She has heard a whisper say, a curse is on her if she stay to look down to Camelot. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. The second part of the poem begins with stanza 5, wherein the poet tells us that a mysterious whisper had told the lady that a curse would befall her if she ever looked out towards Camelot. She therefore interacts with the external world through images thereof reflected by a mirror placed opposite to the window. Day and night she weaves the scenes and sights into a magic web which signifies artistic fecundity. The lady seems to be happy even in her seclusion. She sings merrily as weaves pictures of outside world in happy, gay colors. She has no engagement in the word rather than weaving. In this stanza, the reader also finds out that a curse would befall the lady if she looked directly towards Camelot. The Lady of Shalott uses her craft as a substitute for human involvement and does not know why she has to avoid direct interaction, nor does she seem to care. And moving through a mirror clear that hangs before her all the year, shadows of the world appear. There she sees the highway near, winding down to Camelot. There the river eddy wills, and there the surly village churls, and the red clocks of market girls pass onward from Camelot. So here the lady observes the world outside her window through a mirror. This stanza describes the passers-by as she sees reflected in that mirror. The images she sees are described as shadows because she cannot look at the reality outside. For the Lady of Shalott, reality is represented not by the broad landscape that surrounds her mansion, but only by the images she sees in the mirror. These images are further restricted to the little part of the external world framed by the window, make it too meager to comprise a substantial experience. This is perhaps the reason that her art, her web, is tattered as soon as the lady experiences real passion for life through her attraction and perhaps love for Lancelot. Sometimes a troop of damsels glad, an abbot on an ambling pad, sometimes a curly shepherd lad, or long-haired page in crimson clad, goes by to towered Camelot, and sometimes through the mirror blue, the knights come riding two and two, she hath no loyal knight and true, the Lady of Shalott. Now, this stanza builds a contrast between the life of the lady and the people in the external world. The people in the external world are in motion, going about their busy lives, while the life of the Lady of Shalott is solitary and static. She sees a group of happy girls, a clergyman, a page, and sometimes the knights of Camelot, riding in groups of two reflected in her mirror. The Lady of Shalott feels lonely as she has no lover or companion. But in her web she still delights to weave the mirror's magic sights. For often through the silent nights, a funeral with plumes and lights and music went to Camelot. Or when the moon was overhead, came two young lovers lately bed. I am half sick of shadows, said the Lady of Shalott. Now the Lady of Shalott delights weaving scenes and sights of the outside world reflected by the mirror into a magic web. They have a magical attraction and charm for her. She observes a funeral procession and two young lovers recently married. She sadly exclaims, I am half sick of shadows. In this way, it is hinted that she is sexually frustrated. Now starts of third part. A bow shot from her bower eaves, he rode between the Warley sheaves. The sun came dazzling through the leaves, and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold Sir Lancelot. A red cross knight for ever kneeled to a lady in his shield that sparkled on the yellow field beside remote Shalott. This stanza, which opens the third part of the poem, introduces Sir Lancelot, one of the knights of Arthur's Round Table. One day, Sir Lancelot passes close by the mansion of the Lady of Shalott. The image of Sir Lancelot shoots into the lady's mirror with the force of an arrow fired from the roof just outside her bedroom window. The description that Tennyson gives of the knight merges his bold, powerful look with his chivalrous actions. Sunlight glints on his shiny armor, making him look as if he is on fire, and the poet also tells us that he is a chivalric knight. His knighthood confirms that he is a man of the highest order and nobility. The gemmy bridle glittered free, like to some branch of stars we see, hung in the golden galaxy, the bridal bells rang merrily. As he rode down to Camelot, and from his blazoned baldric slung, a mighty silver bugle hung, and as he rode his armour rung beside remote Shalott. This stanza shifts the description of Lancelot from the visual to the oral. The bells of his bridle ring merrily as he rides, his armour rings as well, and the baldric in his equipment belt is a mighty bugle, its musical notes offering a communication with about the situation at hand. All in the blue, unclouded weather, thick jewelled shone the saddle leather, the helmet and the helmet feather burned like one burning flame together. As he rode down to Camelot, as often through the purple night, below the starry clusters bright, some bearded meteor, trailing light, moves over still Shalott. Now, Sir Lancelot is likened to a meteor in this stanza, glowing as if he were on fire. He looks splendid in his armour and trailed light like a meteor, which serves to emphasize the impressive sight he presented as he rode towards Camelot. Bearded meteor is a kind of shooting star followed by a trail of light which is here being compared to a beard. His broad, clear brow in sunlight glowed. On burnished hooves his war horse trod. From underneath his helmet flowed his coal black curls as he rode down to Camelot. From the bank and from the river he flashed into the crystal mirror. Tira lira by the river, sang Sir Lancelot. In this stanza, the lady is able to see Sir Lancelot for the first time. Tennyson says that he flashed into the crystal mirror, which is a befitting expression because his shining armor flashes everywhere he goes. It is especially appropriate in the given context because the lady earlier referred to the images in her mirror as shadows, which are of course dark and dull. Also of significance is the fact that Sir Lancelot also sings as he moves. Thus, the immediate cause of the lady's attraction to him, the thing that prompts her to look out of the window, is not visual but oral. Tennyson here suggests the fullness of life that the lady cannot avoid any longer. Lancelot sings a traditional folk refrain which is historically accurate and invokes a sense of nostalgia in readers of Tennyson's time. She left the web, she left the loom, she made 3 paces through the room. She saw the water lily bloom, she saw the helmet and the plume. She looked down to Camelot, out flew the web and floated wide. The mirror cracked from side to side. The curse is come upon me, cried the Lady of Shalott. Although it is Sir Lancelot's singing that makes the lady tempt fate by going to the window and looking out, she never actually sees him, just as his helmet and the feather upon it. The irony of this is worried. However, within the rush of mystical occurrences which indicate that the curse the lady mentioned earlier is indeed real. The mirror cracks, the web flows out. The lady knows that the curse has befallen her. Now starts our fourth and the last part. In the stormy east wind straining, the pale yellow woods were waning. The broad stream in banks complaining, heavily the low sky raining. Over towered Camelot. Down she came and found a boat, beneath a willow left afloat, and round about the prose she wrote, the Lady of Shalott. Now this part describes the death of the Lady of Shalott. Her end is pathetic. She lies down in a boat and writes the Lady of Shalott round the front part of the boat, which is carried by the water of the river to Camelot. It is significant that the lady finds the time to write her name on the side of the boat. If one accepts the interpretation that the mirror symbolizes self-knowledge, then she is a woman whose identity has been shattered at this point of the poem. She has no name to sign, just a title, Lady, and a location, Shalott. The weather changes with the change in the condition of the lady. At the beginning of the poem, the weather is pleasant and the lady is happy weaving the web. The end of her mysterious existence is heralded by storm and rain, with the trees looking pale and river flowing with a mourning sound. And down the river's dim expanse, like some bold seer in a trance, seeing all his own mischance with a glassy countenance, did she look to Camelot? And at the closing of the day, she loosed the chain and down she lay. The broad stream bore her far away, the Lady of Shalott. Now the lady understands that she is doomed as she looks towards Camelot to have a glance of Sir Lancelot, who has sealed her fate. She can foresee her future like a sage and knows that her end is near. Lying robed in snowy white, that loosely flew to left and right, the leaves upon her fair falling light through the noises of the night. She floated down to Camelot, and as the boat had wound along the willowy hills and fields among, they heard her singing her last song, the Lady of Shalott. The lady is lying in the boat, dressed in white that symbolizes her shroud as well as her innocence. She floats down to Camelot, singing her last song. They mentioned are the reapers who earlier in the poem were so charmed by the lady's voice. They are the people of Shalott, people of Camelot. Heard a carol, mournful, holy, chanted loudly, till her blood was frozen slowly, and her eyes were darkened wholly. Turn to tower Camelot. For ere she reached upon the tide, the first house by the water side, singing in her song she died, the Lady of Shalott. The death of the Lady of Shalott is surrounded by with standard death images, cold, darkness, and mournful singing, among others. The reapers listen to her song, that is sad. Before she reaches the first house by the riverside, she dies while singing her song. Under tower and balcony, by golden wall and gallery, a gleaming shape she floated by, dead pale between the houses high, silent into Camelot. Out upon the wharfs they came, knight and burgher, lord and dame, and round the prow they read her name, the Lady of Shalott. The lady's corpse is described as dead pale and gleaming, providing a stark visual contrast to the night as she floats past Camelot. Tennyson lists the occupants of the castle as they are probably becoming aware of the lady's existence for the first time, although she was quite aware of their existence. They are described as curious out of their houses and out and onto the wharf to look, walking around to read her name on the front of the boat. This stanza ends, leaving the reader to anticipate what effect the light will have on the people of Camelot. Here comes our last stanza. Who is this, and what is here? And in the lighted palace near died the sound of royal cheer, and they crossed themselves for fear, all the knights at Camelot. But Lancelot mused a little space. He said, she has a lovely face. God in his mercy lend her grace, the Lady of Shalott. In the first 5 lines of this stanza, the initial curiosity of the people of Camelot turns to fear, the primitive fear of seeing a dead person, and the way these Christian people respond in order to protect them when faced with something ominous is to make the sign of the cross. Tennyson brings this long poem to a climax at this point. The Lady of Shalott is so enchanted with the idea of Camelot that she eventually is forced to look out of the window to see it herself, even though it entailed doom for her. But Lancelot, whose stunning presence affected the lady so personally that it ultimately drew her to her death, looks at her, thinks for a little space, and finally dispassionately remarks that she is pretty. Sir Lancelot is the innocent murderer of the lady. He appreciates her and her loveliness. Tennyson makes Lancelot's next line a standard benediction of the time that might have been said over anyone, whether friend or stranger. Now, on the thematic plane, the poem expresses the anatomy between art and life. It raises the question of whether or not seclusion is necessary for artistic achievement. In the beginning of the poem, despite her isolation, the Lady of Shalott experiences artistic fulfillment and accomplishment in her safe haven of Shalott. She works on her web and sings her songs blissful and happy. However, her art is doubly removed from life. It merely mimics the shadows glimpsed through a mirror and is far from direct observation of real life. This isolation finally prompts her to a gesture of passion and to embrace her own death. The mirror cracks, symbolizing the end of her artistic abilities. The poem thus becomes a moral tale dealing with the dangers and inadequacy of an isolated existence. The central themes concern isolation and apprehension of reality. She has exchanged shadows for reality and has escaped from a sterile death in life, moved into the world of experience, and finally suffered death, a natural part of human condition. The central paradox is that freedom and love may involve destruction, and that acceptance of life is also acceptance of death, are also the paradoxes of the human condition itself. Here our poems ends, The Lady of the Shallot by Alfred Lord Tennyson. I hope you understand the poem very well. If you like the video, please like, share and comment, and please subscribe the channel for further updates. Thank you very much for joining us.